Following the scrimmage Saturday afternoon, Nick Saban he opens with a statement, generally just his observations, what stood out to him. And then he takes questions from the media, from the reporters that are there. And remember, no statistics were released by Alabama Media Relations following the scrimmage. So what Nick Saban says is basically all you can form your opinions on. Certainly I talk to people who watch the scrimmage, try to do some background reporting to have an idea of where all the competitions are headed. So certainly I talk to people who were at the scrimmage. All that is off the record. It's just background information. So all that you can use on the record about anything is what Nick Saban says. We weren't allowed to watch, so we're taking Nick Saban's observations, and that's what we're using to make informed decisions about all the competitions. Is what you, the fan, what you guys are using. Nick Saban took 7 questions following the scrimmage. And 3 of the 7 questions were directly about the quarterbacks. Let's go to Gino. Gino wants to talk about the quarterbacks. Gino, welcome into the show. How are you today?
Going on, man?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing all right. Well, you basically it off the first practice and everything. And, Saban was talking about a lot of what quarterback's decision-making and such, but he's also talking about as far as how tired they were from having 12 practices and, several two-a-days and stuff like that without any kind of a break. But, it's still, and I'm still not going to use that fact that he's a freshman, because Johnny Manziel had success, Jameis Winston had success. I'm going to throw that out the window because, even though Saban hasn't started a true freshman at a quarterback, he started a true freshman as far as Micah Fitzpatrick and others as far as in different, less key positions. They're key positions as far as on the defensive side, but he still started them when he felt like they were deserving of it. I think right now, because the fact that all 3 players are getting equal reps with first-team offense, not only says that he's right there in amongst them as far as Jalen Hurts, but I believe that if they sit there and they was to say based on, I think Jalen Hurts is running away from it. I think he is because of all the success that he's having already. If Cooper Bateman and Blake Barnett, they've been in the system a lot longer. If they were ahead of him, or I feel like if they were ahead of him, then they would have already positioned themselves ahead of him, and they haven't. To me, I think the only reason why they haven't made him a starter or already going to tell him that he's going to start or anything of the kind is because, for one, it's going to sit there and USC's still not going to know who to prepare for, or the first ball game's not going to be able to sit there and know who to prepare for. But also, if you sit there and make Jalen Hurts or make a true freshman a starter, what's Blake Barnett do and Cooper Bateman going to do? They're going to quit.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it goes back to why name a starter before you have to. Couple points exactly. I want to make, Gino. You brought up a good point that I don't think I had mentioned, in the fact that Nick Saban set it up for the first scrimmage was at the tail end of whatever it was, 12 straight practices. That's a good point because I think he does that on purpose. He wants to put them in duress, both physically, mentally, psychologically. He wants to see how you perform because they were tired. Their first break was following the scrimmage on Sunday. That was the first day off they had since opening fall camp, and I think he does that on purpose. And another factor we haven't talked about, the first portion of practice, it poured raining. It absolutely poured raining. And to your point about Johnny Manziel and Jameis Winston, there's one big key difference between them and Jalen Hurts. They were redshirt freshmen. So they both had been in and what's the difference between a true freshman, and a redshirt? Well, it's just 1 year, but it's 1 year in that offense where you get experience, going through practice every day, sitting in those meeting rooms, learning. You're not getting any practical experience in terms of being a starter in a game, but there probably is some benefit to being, 1 year ahead, which Blake Barnett is a redshirt freshman. Well,
wouldn't you say though too? Cooper Bateman's only start was with Ole Miss, and I think that was just to piss Jake Coker off to the point where he played like he did the rest of the year, and even during that game too. But with Jalen Hurts coming through mid-year, he's not that far behind what a redshirt freshman would be, in my opinion.
I tell you this, he certainly doesn't act like a true freshman. And I want to read this to you, Gino. You brought this up. This was tucked away, and I don't know how many people picked up on Nick Saban's comment. Listen to this and listen to it carefully and see if you pick up on what Nick Saban really said. He was asked to evaluate the quarterbacks today, and in the middle of the answer, Here's what he said. So I think it sort of gave us a good idea who might be most ready to manage the team, but I think that decision is far from getting made. Just my feeling based on watching the scrimmage today on the field. He said today gave them a good idea who might be most ready to manage the team. That was telling to me. He didn't name who that player was, but he said it gave us a good idea who might be most ready to manage the team. And, you know, based on the reports I got from scrimmage, there was one quarterback who stood out over the others. And if there's one guy who's most ready to manage the team, now what we don't know is how Nick Saban defines managing. Is it just leading the guys in the huddle, getting the play calls, getting the checks, all that? Or is it moving the team? We don't know what he meant by managing the team, but the fact that he said after one scrimmage, it gave us a good idea who might be most ready to manage the team, that stood out to me. And if I'm trying to read into who that might be, my thought he's talking about Jalen Hurts, but that's just my opinion.
Well, I'm going to leave you with this, but, it brings back to the point of what you said, when you talked about it before. When Cooper Bates was sitting there throwing the ball, I don't care who criticizes you or who criticizes me for even talking about it, but when you limit your offense because you can't sit there and not only move with your legs, but you can't sit there and throw a deep pass because you're 4 or 5 yards slack on the pass, it limits your offense. But when you have somebody that can sit there and up your offense to the point where his legs can get you a 50 or 60-yard touchdown, and you're basically having to play 12 against 11 versus 10 against 11 because you're going to limit the offense of what you're going to do, that's a no-brainer.
I think you're exactly right, and that's what Jalen Hurts brings.